Today I'm going to be talking about trauma. Look, you don't need to be stuck forever. If you've gone through a traumatic event, I'm hoping that by the end of this, you'll see your situation in a new light. There are different degrees of trauma, of course, so I don't need to make I don't need to make light of it in any way. Um, but everyone goes through trauma in some fashion or another. And I want to use the way I'm thinking about the little model that using to think about reality to help us in this particular area. Because traumatic events do impact our identity. And if you've been watching any of my previous videos, you know that I've been talking a lot about an identity expansion. I'm not really a person that fully um, uh, imbibes the idea of frequency, but I do believe in macro principles because we are macro beings in a macro universe, right? We are not atoms, we are not electrons, and so I'm going to show you some things that I like to think about in terms of trauma, right, and what people go through. And it's the simple principles that we've been talking about, but you should hopefully, I don't want to set it up the bar too high, right? It's always good to lower someone's standards, so they don't overestimate. But I do hope that this will help you give you a different lens into how to interpret um, trauma and how to heal and move forward. So of course, I will start always with a circle, and of course my marker is failing me. I need more of these. Feel free to send me a bunch of markers or add to my Cash App so I can order more markers. Um, I'm kidding, by the way. So this is your identity. I made it one big thing, and this is your identity 1.0. Let me give you the best case scenario to help you understand this. So this is your identity 1.0, and it is going to go through a couple of iterations, right? So there's a bigger version of you. This is the next version of you, 2.0, and then there's another bigger version of you coming up, right? So here is the issue. This is the best case scenario, but it is still an issue. The game, if you've been watching my videos recently, is identity expansion. You want to expand your identity constantly. This is the infinite identity game, right? The infinite mindset or the infinite identity game. And it requires you to have this kind of identity expansion with a lot of density, nothing superficial, because you can grow big and just be full of hot air, but really embodying who you are and really owning that, right? Having principles of gravitas, being very authentically you, while constantly pursuing growth. You want to be a better person, a well-improved person, and this will result in you having an impact an impact on the fabric of reality. So this is a version of you, and this is your progression. I tried to make this dotted, but I think it's a little messy. It might not show up on the camera. So let me just draw some boundary, right? So these are the next steps of you. The problem with trauma, right? The first thing is trauma is an external event. Trauma is external, right? So I can't, right now, my model does not accept, my simple model is not yet equipped to understand internal issues like that. But most traumatic events I will say are external. We generally don't inflict damage on our identity. It's usually something imposed upon us on the external, which tells you one thing in principle: you are not your trauma. I'll say that again. You are not the traumatic event. You are distinguished. And that sounds really simple, but a lot of times people blame the victim. Sometimes, yeah, there's a lot of victim blaming, and sometimes the victim blames themselves, right? Regardless of whether they put themselves in that situation or not, they don't own the trauma. The trauma is externally inflicted, right? Generally speaking, right? So what this means, what I'm getting at is, even if you have an external traumatic event, you can maintain your identity through any course, no matter how hard life hits you, right? Whether it's a physical damage, emotional trauma, verbal abuse, physical abuse, right? The identity is impacted, but this is an external event. And I think really what happens is the body tries, the consciousness, your identity tries to reconfigure itself. It tries to reconfigure itself. It starts creating new ways of processing this external event, right? And depending on the magnitude of the traumatic event, the inner identity, the core identity starts to flip, right? There are certain things that happen to you, boom, you're able to just like, shrug them off. Why? Because they're external. They're external. And you've seen in hopefully in one of my other videos, you've seen that in my very simple, naive model, right? There is this part of your identity that is external and is external to your core identity, your inner identity, right? And so every day, like you hit yourself, you stub your toe, that hurts. It doesn't impact your identity, right? It's something that hits the external and is easily redirected. You get a minor pain, it doesn't stick long. Within a week, it's within an hour, it's gone. Okay, but the kind of events, right, that go past the external, the superficial, and go deep, hitting core values, core identity, um, identity spaces, right? Those ones. So I wanted to really talk about the extreme case of identity expansion with unresolved trauma, right? But before we get to that, right, under certain circumstances, the body will be doing, the identity will have certain reactions that's normal for identity expansion, right? Faith, fear, pulls, for example, right? And then what happens is two things from what from how I want to approach this is two things begin to happen. Number one is that the traumatic event begins to, like, the inner core identity begins to mirror the traumatic event, right? It begins to um, uh, it begins to mirror and seek out the same behavior, right? So it's like, this is what happened to me. I'm just pushing this exact output back into the world in some form or another. The other thing is sometimes the inner reactions of the identity, I'm going to call this a black box, right? Reconfigure to kind of resonate more with the event. So a lot of things are reconfigured inside so that the person can just continue to cope, right? And what happens is the person might have this unresolved, right? But like any injury, it's a scar. And like any scar, if you don't have the proper cast, you don't have the proper way to evacuate um, and um, and let the process heal correctly, what happens is these will act as weights in the opposite direction constantly, right? So you might, when you reach your 2.0 season because you've neglected traumatic events, right, and you're ready to move to the next level, what will happen is you will have this inner resistance pulling you back constantly. So let's say you finally improved yourself, worked on yourself to the point where you have entered a new realm um, of influence in reality. Well, you have reality. Reality is going to be pushing its limits, pushing to test the integrity of the version of yourself that you are claiming is your new default. But the problem is now you have forces within, right? Because assuming the trauma is not constant, it's not a constant thing, right? Because in your new identity, you've escaped the current environment. But what you probably don't realize is there's a mirror or resonance, right, of what happened in the past, still lingering in your inner core, in the core of who you are, right? And so we've talked about this idea of faith or fight, right? I don't know. I had two F's there: faith or flight, and fear. Faith or fight. Sorry, and fear or flight, right? And these push you back in the opposite direction. So now, not only do you your courage to keep expanding doesn't, not only it's there, of course, it's doing everything it's supposed to be doing, right? And maybe you're amplifying it as much as possible, but you have, and then you have this fear that you're trying to reduce, right? But then you have this traumatic event that you have not addressed, this embodiment of a memory that is still lingering, right? And it's supposedly healed, but it's clearly, whenever it's uncovered, it is causing a lot of damage. It is adding to the fear, like they are, like, the math, right? This vector direction plus this direction. I believe this is correct. Mathematicians, help me out here, right? The magnitudes of these, and they're going in the same direction, equals the sum of the magnitudes of these particular vectors. So this, the same way, right? Fear is resisting the directionality of your identity, and unresolved traumatic inner memories of traumatic events are also adding to the flight, because it's telling, it may just be resisting your faith. It may be telling you you're not good enough, right? So not only do you have external reality, right? Remember, this is a fabric, right? So really, this is supposed to be your faith, the faith of your identity pushing upon reality, right? And reality is tugging back, but reality is getting bent because you're supposed to be having some kind of impact, right? But reality is pushing back. And not only is it pushing back to test your identity, you're also, like, a lot of things are going to test your identity, right? The skills you need to have, the resilience you need to have in your new field, in your new space, right? Whatever that could be, whether it's in a new job, a new position, a new role, right? You're a new, let's say you have a startup or a business that you've begun, or you're started doing something new or you've gotten a new relationship, new friendship, right? You're a new mentor, any kind of, this is applicable to any part of life, right? So you, with this is just an extra baggage that is going to be deflating your supposed default identity. If the default identity is the identity where you can exist at a low energy, right, while having the impact on the reality you desire, right? These events will shrink that, will put pressure on that, and your default is really, I mean, your brain is a computer. Your brain doesn't want. Your brain is responsible for two things, and I like to think, right? And it's obviously, these are very simplistic ways of thinking about it, but for the sake of this conversation, your brain is a supercomputer, uh, a physiological, yeah, a physiological supercomputer that is connected to who you are on different realms. And its job is to, one, form your identity against time and against different situations and circumstances, right? Um, to form or collapse your identity according to different circumstances and according to your desires, right? And according to all of the reactions that it is set within itself. And also to allow you to exert that influence on the world. So the brain is responsible for creating the identity, right, which impacts the world. So we're to be talking to you guys. So why am I saying all of this? Well, these are the growths of your identity, right? And there will be iterations. Trust me, you will become a better person over time, right? What we're saying is how to optimally get there. Please, don't knock off don't knock off talking to a friend, someone you trust. This helps you think about how to resolve. Don't talk to somebody who will feed the fire. Don't talk to somebody who will add more problems to your life, right? Somebody trustworthy, right? To talk things out and be sure this person is confidential, right? And that they won't multiply your pain, basically. The second thing is make sure to get therapy. So number one, talk to someone and then get therapy. No matter what, conversations are everything, because words determine your identity, right? So we are. made of words. We are words. And so, um, what you say about yourself also fuels your fight or flight. What you say about traumatic events, right, either improve or resist them, right? What you say about your fear, right, in response to your fight or flight. A lot of times there there are these binaries that go on in our identity expansion, and so we always want to fuel the one that is moving us in the direction we wish, right? If there's concern for identity and expansion in a specific domain, yeah, you should be concerned, right? So you intentionally let fear rise a bit so that you can have proper judgment. If not, we'll just be doing crazy things all the time. So there's wisdom in balance, right? But controlled balance is meant letting your faith take over. And in the realm of trauma, you want to make sure that nothing is hindering you, because by the time you get to 10.0, whatever that looks like to you, this is your 10.0 identity. And it is, let's say, let's just, because these are arbitrary numbers, let me just throw something out there. Let's say it's your self-actualized version, or it's, if self-actualized is the place you want to be, it is the closest you could get, right? Let's say, um, let's say you get to this point. What will keep you here is that other people can trust you. You are self-assured, you're relaxed, you're calm, you're constantly exuding a force that other people can trust, right? And so somebody who is very disturbed on the inside, and really to no fault of theirs, right? We have to be very um, we have to be kind to one another, because once you realize that people carry stuff, it helps you to be merciful. It helps you to be patient. Oh yeah, she came in late today. There's something going on. Obviously, you can't just look at the external. You must also look at the heart. You must look inside the mind, inside the identity, inside the person. What are the forces that's engaging this person, right? And the goal of this is self-awareness. Figure out if it's not fear and fight. Maybe it's envy. Maybe it's jealousy. Maybe it's rage or bitterness or whatever it may be, laziness, right? These different things that are interacting with us, right? And so, like I said, you might be at the level where you finally want, maybe 2.0 is your next level and you're there, right? And everybody's counting on you and the pressure is on. This guy is not what you want. That's why a lot of people at certain levels start to get therapy, start to get coaching, right? Because you need you need to evacuate some of the waste produced by old reactions that came upon you when the inner core tried to create, either mirror or seek out or resonate, create a barrier, create ways of dealing with events it's not familiar with, right? Things that are kind of damaging to the integrity of the identity, right? So I will be clear. I mean, this idea came to me. Um, I will say that um, that we can work. Okay, I might have to trim this part out, but because I had a train of thought and I left it. But we have we can make sure that, what am I even trying to say? Right? I've already said it before that we are not what happens to us, right? The problem is when we allow what happens to us to continue to impact us through time. Okay, when we allow uh, things that should have been dealt with 5, 10 iterations ago, 5, 10 years ago, 5, 10 months ago, to continue to linger and hinder our identity expansion. If the game is identity expansion, then self-awareness allows us to say, this is my problem. It's keeping me back. Self-improvement says, I need to minimize, reduce, or annihilate this issue so that it doesn't hinder my progress. And that could also mean learning to cope, right? Learning skills to keep at bay the forces that prevent us from moving to the next level. Because there's a lot in store, right? There's no limit to who and what we can become if we do not allow these things that are in us to keep us from becoming the version of ourselves that will be proud of, honestly, and that the world will find value in. And so the game is just to continue to be, pay attention to traumatic events, right? Push up the faith in you and go against the fear and the negative emotions, right? And modulating them, because sometimes those aren't there by accident. They're there, of course. Everything that happens within the identity is there for a reason. It's there to protect us. So I hope you liked this video. I had a lot to say. I don't know if it was helpful in this specific topic, but I wanted to stretch it in this direction. I didn't do any research. I just thought about some general principle. I said, you know what, this can work. And it came to me and I was like, yeah, you know what? We are not the things that happen to us. And we're not at fault. We're not always at fault for the things that happen to us. But we can choose to not allow the things that happen to us to prevent us from becoming the better person that we want to be, right? And so thank you, of course, for joining this video. Like and subscribe, and let's have some conversations around this. These are just some ideas. Obviously, it's a little scary sometimes to put an idea out there, but yeah, it's a conversation. This stuff is exciting me at the moment, and I'm like, of all of the things I'm learning, I'm like, I need to get this stuff out of my head and into and written somewhere. And I'm like, okay, why not share it out? Let's see what people think, and let's see if it can have an impact and bring value to someone. So if you've been with me from video 1 about this topic till now, I just want to say thank you. I know that there's a lot of different videos on YouTube, obviously. So for you to take your time to listen to someone like me, it's truly a privilege. So thank you. I'll see you in the next video.